Hi everyone. With so many of us in quarantine, a lot of you have been asking me, how can I learn to make bread? So in this baking tutorial, I'm going to walk you through how to make a beautiful crusty white bread loaf using a recipe from King Arthur flour. So as we get started, we're going to go ahead and take 450 grams of flour. I also have the American measurements in the bottom right corner if you need them. We're then going to add 7 grams of yeast. A little bit of yeast there, and you're going to add it on one side of the bowl, and next is the salt, which you're going to add on the opposite side of the bowl. So take half a tablespoon of salt and put it on the opposite side of the yeast. That's because salt tends to delay yeast growth. And then take 340 grams of water and go ahead and pour it in. Attach your dough hook. And then from that point, go ahead and set a timer for about 6 to 8 minutes and mix on speed 2. Generally with dough, you don't want to go faster than that in your KitchenAid because what's going to happen is you're going to burn out your motor. Pour yourself your favorite adult beverage and sit back and wait a little bit. Now you'll see I added a little bit more flour. That's because the mixture was very wet, and I think that's because today is an extra humid day here in Florida. You may or may not need to do that depending on the circumstances in your specific kitchen. So now that this time has passed, go ahead and put just a dollop of olive oil in a bowl. And I like to just wipe it around the sides to make sure that everything is nice and slippery for when we put in our very sticky dough. And I'm going to go ahead and show you a very basic hand kneading method for those of you who maybe don't have a dough hook or a mixer. So all you do is plunk it down in just a little bit of flour on your counter and more or less put it in a ball, and then take your hand and push it outward, give it a quarter turn, push it outward again, roll it back, and just do that, turning it a quarter turn each time until you feel the dough come together. If you are doing this entirely by hand, you probably want to start this process in a bowl because it'll be pretty messy, but it'll soon come together into that. And when you put your dough in your bowl, go ahead and give it a couple turns to make sure that it has a little bit of oil all around. At this point, most recipes tell you to cover this up in plastic and put it to the side for an hour for the second rise, but we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm trying to reduce single-use plastics in my kitchen as much as possible, and I asked the advice of the amazing Jane Beadle of the Great British Bake Off, and she told me the best thing to do is take a little bit of flour and sprinkle it over the top of your dough ball, gently pat it in, and that will keep your dough from drying out during this process. This recipe makes 2 loaves, so just eyeball this or use a scale, depending on how precise you want to be, and divide it in half. Take the other half to the side for the moment, and here's how we're going to go ahead and shape this half. Put your thumbs in the top of the dough ball and gently pull it downwards and pinch it at the bottom. You're creating surface tension by doing this, and by bringing that dough to the bottom of the dough ball, you're going to create the inner structure of the bread and help control the rise in the oven. Do this 4 times, turning the dough ball a quarter way each time. When you're done, gently place it on top of your baking pan and do the same process with the second half of the dough. After an hour, your 2 loaves should look something like this. Spritz them down with water, or if you don't have a spritzer at hand, just put a little bit of water in the cup of your hand and drip it over the top and distribute it evenly, gently using your hands. If you want to add a little bit of topping and flavoring, use sesame seeds or poppy seeds, or in this case, everything bagel seasoning, and put it over the top and distribute it evenly. Don't go overboard, and don't worry if a little bit falls off the side of the loaf onto the baking pan. That's completely fine. It's not going to ruin anything. Once you're done, you're going to have to slice both loaves in a specific way. There's a special baking tool called a lamb. Most people don't have it. It's okay just to use a sharp knife, a bread knife if you have one. The first slash is going to be down the middle of the loaf, and you want your blade to be exactly vertical to the pan. And then the 2 slices on the side are going to be at 45-degree angles. Do the same for the second loaf and put the loaves in your preheated 450-degree oven for 25 to 35 minutes. And there you have it, 2 beautiful loaves that you can use for sandwiches or for snacking. Now comes the hardest part, not cutting into them until they've cooled. I hope you enjoy. Please let me know if you try this and how it turns out. Happy baking!